I would like to begin with the fraud topic. I've been keeping a close eye on many of the communications you have issued in partnership with your GOP colleagues here in Minnesota. This is something that has been dominating the news headlines as of late. You, Congressman, have applauded the House Oversight Committee for opening an investigation into the fraud allegations, saying Minnesotans deserve answers, not excuses, specifically from the governor. As a member of Congress, have you received, Congressman, any answers that you were looking for from the governor?
No, we haven't. And that's been part of this frustration is that as the days and the months and the years have unfolded here where we've seen the fraud, we've seen prosecutions, we've seen the U.S. attorney and the investigations, we continue to wait for more information from the governor and from the state of Minnesota to help us understand how did it happen, what departments was this going through, who was responsible from an executive level within our state government, and moreover, what is the communication between the state and the federal government? Because a lot of the fraud cases and a lot of the funds that are being used or fraudulently taken from us are some programs that have a state federal relationship. So from a federal perspective, as we debate things like the Farm Bill, which has the nutrition title in it, which the SNAP program is funded, those federal dollars come to the state, and the state then is administering those programs. And so we've been asking for information. We've been asking for what have we learned when these cases have been presented and prosecuted. What has the governor done to change the way we do business in this state? And we have no answers. We have no clear direction that they're even acknowledging it as something that's very serious. I mean, we're talking over $1 billion now. The U.S. attorney is saying he estimates that will be fully prosecuted, and so this shouldn't be a Republican issue. This shouldn't be a Democrat issue. This should be a Minnesotan issue. This should be an American issue, and that's what we're asking is just more information, sunlight on and transparency on how things are happening and how we are addressing to fix them.
I want to specifically reference, Congressman, a December 4th letter to the governor. You joined your three GOP Minnesota colleagues along with other congressional Republicans stating, quote, "Under your watch, billions of taxpayer dollars have been stolen," end quote. Now, you mentioned that figure that you are using there. We have a $250 million figure associated with the Feeding Our Future fraud scheme based on the federal investigation and prosecution in that regard. Do you have an inkling, Congressman, on when charges or prosecution for the Housing Stabilization Services Program as well as autism services fraud could happen?
So we're hearing from the U.S. attorney. Obviously, they're in the prosecution stage, but they feel very confident that they have the case being built. That this we will see in the coming weeks. But this predates even the Feeding Our Future fraud. It started with the prosecution of a daycare fraud. Prior to that, then the Feeding Our Future, the autism center fraud, the housing stabilization fraud. These are, again, not partisan talking points. This is coming from the U.S. Attorney's Office, where they're either have prosecuted or are investigating and currently prosecuting. So unfortunately, it feels a little bit like we're just at the tip of the iceberg, and there's more every day that's coming out.
Sticking on our theme of correspondence that we've been tracking here, in a recent letter to the new U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, Daniel Rosen, you've requested an investigation into reports Minnesota tax dollars are ending up in the hands of al-Shabaab terrorist network in Somalia. We've heard a lot of that talk, specifically since a publication came out here around the Thanksgiving holiday, specifically mentioning Somalia and that terrorist network. How, Congressman, do you think that transfer of funds is happening?
So when you see the case being prosecuted and you see the evidence, and as the U.S. Attorney, Assistant Attorney Joe Thompson, in the courtroom showed, the evidence showed that these fraudsters were taking their dollars and they were buying real estate in Kenya and Somalia. They literally found bags full of stolen cash in Kenya and Somalia from these crimes. And what we know from our counterintelligence and what we know from our federal government is that Somalia, Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda, the terrorist networks and the terrorist groups, money does not come in and out of Somalia without some sort of hand in the pot from those terrorist organizations. Over and over again, our intelligence has shown us that that's the case. And so it's hard for me to believe that millions of dollars of our stolen money is then taken to Kenya to buy real estate, to buy apartment buildings, to buy cars, to literally have duffel bags full of cash. And the terrorist organizations there, know nothing about that. That would be counter to everything that we know from our intelligence. They know, and they have their hands on money that's coming in and out of Somalia. And so it bears the question, have the terrorist organizations been involved in any of these funds? Do they have their hands in those duffel bags of our cash?
So then the follow-up question is, in your communications with either directly Attorney Rosen or others within the justice system, are we expecting a formal investigation from that standpoint? We've seen Department of Homeland Security, we've seen the Treasury Department, the Oversight Committee, Small Business Administration last week announcing as well. Are you expecting there to be an additional investigation here by the DOJ?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we're seeing right now. Every day that goes by, we see another agency saying, "Wait a minute here, we need transparency. We need to look under the hood here to see where this fraud has occurred and follow the money." And so I feel confident with Treasury, Homeland, the Department of Ag, the Small Business Administration, the House Oversight Committee. We're going to do our best to get to the bottom of it. And the sad part, and the part that's frustrated me the most, is that this has all happened because we have not had that transparency at the state level. You referenced the letters we have sent the governor. We have asked, let us see under the hood. Show us what's going on. Show us what's broke and how you're fixing it. And without any of that communication, without any of that confidence for us and for our neighbors in southern Minnesota to know that there is acknowledgement that this fraud is bad and it's happened, and we should prosecute these criminals that have done it, and we should also then reform government to make sure it doesn't happen again. Minus any of that happening, it is incumbent upon us at the federal government to say, wait a minute here, time out. We need to look under the hood. And I'm happy to hear that, we have multiple agencies at the federal level now that are looking at it. We're going to follow the dollars.
Do you think any of these funds that have disappeared can be recovered, Congressman?
So we're trying, and that's part of the problem. I introduced a bill in Congress a couple months ago called the FAR Act. And so as we've started to see these cases being prosecuted, we've seen these crooks being thrown in jail. The evidence has shown that they're hiding their assets in Kenya and Somalia. And unfortunately, those governments aren't cooperating with us, with the federal government, to seize those assets, our assets that have been stolen. And so I introduced the FAR Act, which essentially says, we're going to have a conversation and probably halt all foreign aid to your country if you're not cooperating with us to let us, get that stolen money back. And that really poses the question of, do the terrorist organizations have hands in these duffel bags of cash? Because their governments aren't cooperating with us to try to get those assets back.
Given the information you have at your disposal right now, do you think Governor Walz has done anything criminal?
I can't say that. I mean, I can say what he has done is incompetence. He's displayed incompetence. No CEO, no vice president, no employee of any business in Minnesota would have their job tomorrow if they had 1/100th of the fraud on their resume that this governor has. And the fact that he hasn't acknowledged it full-throated and said, listen, this happened under my watch. This sucks. I'm going to fix it. Here's how I'm going to fix it. Minus that confidence, minus that ability to take charge of this issue, it's created a lot of questions and a lot of frustrations. Does it rise to the level of criminality? I don't know. I'm not going to play lawyer, judge, and jury, but I'm going to tell you, it doesn't pass the smell test. And I think voters in Minnesota, in southern Minnesota, in our nation deserve transparency on this.
Final question I have prepared for this particular topic, Congressman, is the president going into the Thanksgiving holiday has been criticized for some of his recent word choices tied to Governor Walz on the topic of fraud, specifically dealing with some of his word choices. How do you respond to those concerns that people here in southern Minnesota have?
Yeah, I always think about my Norwegian grandfather, and a lot of politicians today don't speak in the way my Norwegian grandfather taught me how to treat my neighbors. And I will tell you, if I spent my time commenting, criticizing, or congratulating politicians when they say something smart, stupid, or offensive, it would be a full-time job. And so I just try to hold myself to the standards that my faith and my family has taught me. But to get in the business of commenting every time a politician says something stupid, it would be a full-time job.
I want to switch now to the ICE presence in Minnesota. The little we know about it, we understand for um, confidential reasons. We're not privy to a lot of it, as I'm sure you are not as well. I want to begin, though, by asking you this. What is your message in the here and now to Somalis living in Minnesota's first district?
If you're here and you're here legally and you're a productive part of our society, awesome, great. We value you. We respect you. You are our neighbors. If you're here illegally, if you're here with ill intent, if you're here with a criminal history that has broken that trust that we have, then you should be worried. ICE is just over the last few days apprehended 14 people with pretty bad records. We're talking criminal misconduct. We're talking sexual abuse. We're talking domestic abusers. That to me doesn't smell of, hey, you're a productive citizen that is really, obeying the law and doing the things that you should do to be here and be a productive citizen. So I would say for our neighbors that are doing it the right way, congratulations. Thank you. We honor and respect you.
Playing off that thread, last week, the president called Somalis, quote, garbage and said they all should go back where they came from. Do you align, Congressman, with the president's uniform approach of categorizing an entire group of people in this way?
Listen, if it's Somalis, if it's Irish, if it's Norwegians, if it's Germans, if they've committed crimes, they should be prosecuted and we should have law and order. But to single out, one population over another is a broad brush that I would not use.
Representative Omar, Somali native, and she's the first African refugee to serve in Congress. You work beside her representing Minnesota as one of 8 U.S. representatives from the Gopher State. Congressman, specifically in the here and now, how would you describe your working professional relationship with the representative?
We're friendly when we focus on Minnesota things that we can agree on and work together on. And we have, in the past, co-authored or worked together on different pieces of legislation. My style is to work with people and focus on the things that we can get done and agree on. There's a lot of politicians that like to, run to the issues that divide us. And so with Congresswoman Omar, if there's areas where there is common sense things that we can work on that are good for my district, good for hers, and good for the entire state and the nation, I will welcome conversations and continue to converse with her on those things.
Have you had communication with the Congresswoman here in the past couple of weeks as this has been unfolding?
Not in a couple of weeks, not in the past couple of weeks.
And then I want to go back to something that you said. As you mentioned, the president's immigration crackdown has been referred to as an enforcement effort targeting the worst of the worst. We're hearing that terminology, right? The worst of the worst. And you mentioned we received word of 12 arrests, but you mentioned 14. Probably a couple more since we got that information. But with the release or the news release we got from ICE last week, it did mention that one of the arrests made in the Twin Cities involved a Mexican, and the only details given was not even a charge, but an arrest for DUI. How is that a representation of the worst of the worst?
Well, first of all, the crime was committed. That person was here illegally. So that is crime one that they broke. Crime two is they're literally driving on our streets. And again, I don't care if it's Hispanic, Somali, Norwegian, Irish, they're breaking the law. They're putting your kids, my kids, our families at risk. Driving drunk, driving under the influence is criminal. And they clearly, A, were here illegally, and B, committed more crimes when they were here. So that's the worst of the worst in my book. They're putting our lives at risk.
How do we as a state, Congressman, move forward for the better as all of this plays out? The outcome is unseen for you and I and for all of us. There's a lot of tension. There is a lot of attention. There is a lot of disagreement. How can we come together and move forward?
I think transparency, it starts with transparency. I think that we have to, we all are paying attention. And we can either pay attention to the emotions and the rhetoric that makes us more mad, sad, happy, or concerned, or we can really focus in on our intellect. And I think Minnesotans, we have a proud, strong heritage of kind of rolling up our sleeves and getting to work and actually trying to figure things out. It's hard to do that when we don't have access to information. So I think it's really important right now that transparency should be the sunlight that can unify us. And again, this shouldn't be Republican or Democrat. This should be Minnesotan. This should be an American type come together. Let's see where we have failed. Let's see where government failed us. Let's see where this fraud and this, maybe program integrity was abused, and then let's fix it. But to focus on, me versus you, us versus them, it's just going to get us further divided. So I think transparency, opening up our eyes to what happened, how it happened, and how we fix it is really important right now.
Should Southern Minnesotans be concerned that federal dollars that have been coming our way in the past might be at jeopardy because of what we are seeing on a state level?
I mean, I think we should be. I think we should be, because unfortunately, Minnesota has lost its trust. It's lost its trust to administer some of these funds. I mean, the state of Minnesota is administering over $70 million a month in SNAP benefits. As we in Congress pass a farm bill over a 10-year period of time, we appropriate $1.2 trillion of federal tax money to these programs. The state of Minnesota is, like other states, receives some of those funds and administers those funds. And when the state of Minnesota has lost that trust from policymakers at the federal level, it's harder for us to go back and say, but we have neighbors that really need these funds. We need to increase this funding. And so the sooner we clean up our mess here in Minnesota, the easier it becomes from the federal level to continue to advocate for these much needed funds. But until that happens, there is a big distrust that has been created right now.